hello, possums. Yes, it is I, the conspicuous moo. And now the media tool stuff has all been finished and it's all come out and there's a tsunami of information crashing over our heads. It's probably time to pass, the best job in Final Fantasy XIV, let's be honest here, and the Scholar. So we're going to be looking today at all of the different Scholar changes postulated thus far for the Endwalking. Much excited! Let's get cracking. Now before we get started, it needs to be pointed out that, there's an awful lot of emphasis on actual potency changes as to, new abilities and new interesting ways of things interacting in this entire toolkit. But it's important that you don't take them as read. Yoshi P has already said these values are subject to change, and we still have 5-ish weeks until Endwalker launches, plus, I think, November the 5th for the next live letter as well, if they stick a few extra details in there. I will take the values that I've gotten here and just comment on them in general, but, like government election promises, they are very much subject to change. So I guess we should start with the healing spells first, because, that's kind of our job. So our most key ability, and the one that we use most of all in our toolkit, Physic, is getting a buff from 400 to 450 potency. I'm just kidding, don't use Physic. Well, I mean, if you absolutely have to, but you have to be pretty desperate. So this is just one of the abilities that's affected by a single trait that scholars will be acquiring automatically at level 85, and it's named called Enhanced Healing Magic. So you don't really need to go out of your way to do anything here, you just have to level an Endwalker and you will acquire this trait halfway on your journey to 90. Now, obviously the Physic thing is a big deal, but the most important changes really are Adloquium. Now, they're going to increase the shield strength of Adloquium from 125% to 180%. The cure potency will remain the same, that's the heal you get when you apply the shield. But, that's quite an increase. And, Sucker does get similar treatment, not to the same extent, they used to be the same. Currently they're the same, 125%. But it's going to go up to 160. And the cure potency has been slightly increased from 180 to 200. Like I said, numbers are flexible. But, they weren't kidding when they said in the live letter they were just tweaking a few numbers around here and there. Those are some substantial tweaks. We're going to get some very, very nice shielding later on. You also notice that our little fairy buddies are going to be getting Embrace and Seraphic Veil changes as well. But we will get to our erstwhile companions soon enough. Now, in addition to those core healing abilities, we also have a few cooldown changes, namely 2 new abilities. Now, the first one is Protraction, and I really do like screams tank at me, which is better, I suppose, than the tank screaming at me. This is acquired at a level 86, and I already know where it's going on the bar. It's going right next to Excogitation, right in the kisser. So, that riddle is finally solved, and I guess Physic is just going to have to shift down to 5. It is a single target. Some people report it as AoE. It's not. If it was an AoE ability, it would be redonkuloso. It increases the max HP of the target by 10% and heals them for that amount as well. And it also increases the HP recovery by any healing actions, not just yours, by 10% for 10 seconds on a 60-second cooldown. So you can use it very, very regularly. It benefits all the other people who might be doing healing in your trial, your raid, or whatever. You can, chuck Excogitation, Fey Union, and then this on at the same time, and that's before you've even started the shields, and my goodness, that's a lot of single target healing. Expedient is the meme ability that everyone's been laughing so hard about, but really, it's really quite good. I mean, in a 15-yard radius that will reduce the damage that all players take for 20 seconds by 10%. That's an extraordinarily useful ability. It's like it's another sacred soil on a 2-minute cooldown. I don't know what people have a problem with here. So the damage reduction is the important aspect. I mean, the sprint, yes, an AoE sprint is probably going to be very useful in a number of situations. Just getting around the cities more quickly when you can't mount, for example. But we're going to have a few people who are going to be running off platforms. Now, if you target this right, there could be people you don't like in the raid who deserved a little dip on the other side of Oblivion. It's going to be useful, it's not going to be essential, but it's going to be a nice quality of life. And, if you're doing speed runs, all the better. I'm actually quite pleased with it, really. Deployment Tactics also gets a boost at level 88, a trait called Enhanced Deployment Tactics. Will reduce its cooldown from 120 seconds to 90 seconds, so that's a nice change as well. Now we move on to the Aether Gauge. Now, there are a couple of changes here, but not to the staple die. The ones that are actually good are unaffected. So Lost Rate, Sacred Soil, Excogitation and Indomitability are still completely unaffected because, you know, they work. They're good abilities, so why bother with those? Energy Drain, on the other hand, has always been a bit pants. You know, you get 500 MP back whenever you use it, but the damage was a bit meh. So instead of making it better, they've removed the 500 MP off and just raised Aetherflow's bonus from 10% MP to 20%. So, you know, this seems like a great change for scholars for the most part in terms of, you know, just keeping your mana levels up because you're going to have the twin mana gaining nukes of Lucid Dreaming and Aetherflow, which is, you know, twice as potent as it was before. You know, the 500 MP recovery you got during Energy Drain was useful if you were really low on mana and you didn't really have anything else to press. But, you know, it wasn't that amazing in the first place. But, of course, taking that away makes Energy Drain even more useless than it already was. It was already at the bottom of my priority list when it came to using the Aether Gauge anyway. And, you know, a 100 potency offloadable cooldown ability, it's a bit crap, frankly. So it does need something else to be added to it to make it a little tastier, you know, maybe a single target debuff of some kind, greater potency, make it worth using, anything. But otherwise, you know, it's really going to be relegated to questing and, you know, last resort stuff where you need to clear those stacks so you can get another 3 stacks in. But surely there's going to be something better to press than an Energy Drain in almost every situation. Of course, historically, Square Enix have had an interesting history with Energy Drain. They've always had trouble working out what they're going to do with it. They have changed it in every single expansion. And in Shadowbringers, I think they changed it twice, and they took it away and then gave it back. So it's been an interesting journey, and this is just another chapter of it. So it doesn't look like Endwalker is any different in having trouble knowing what Energy Drain actually is anymore. Let's move on to Faeries. As previously mentioned, thanks to the enhanced healing trait, we are going to get slightly buffed embraceability from Eos or Selene, whichever one you choose. It still doesn't matter. So it's sort of been buffed from 150 to 180 potency. Okay. But a lot of the other fairy abilities have been reduced in potency so far. So Seraphic Veil, the Embrace equivalent, on the Seraphic side of things, is being reduced from 200 to 180 cure potency. So you will expect slightly weaker shielding from your little blue angel there. The Angel's Whisper and the Whispering Dawn, the two fairy abilities that give that nice little regen ability, that has been tuned down from 120 cure potency to 80, which is a 33% decrease. Okay. Consolation, the level 80 Seraph ability, has been changed from 300 cure potency to 250. Now, Fae Blessing was just 350 cure potency and was on the Fairy Gauge. They've changed that, they've reduced it to 320, so that's not too much of a change, not really too worried about that. But more interesting for Fae Blessing is that they've taken it off the Fairy Gauge. So, Fairy Gauge is now just used for Fae Union, or Aether Pact, or Tether, whatever you want to call it, it's the same ability. And as we're mentioning, Fae Union has been also reduced in potency from 400 to 300 at the moment. So, you know, of all the fairy abilities that the Scholar has, only really the Fae and Seraphic Illumination abilities have been left untouched, basically. Now, in terms of the actual changes, that's quite a variation. It's between 8 and 33% reduction in potency, according to the abilities that you're looking at. Why they're doing that, well, we're going to speculate, really, can't we? You know, it's hard to know, really, until we do get the final numbers, of course, but you know, there's more weakening and strengthening here across the board. It seems to be a pattern that they are reducing the potencies there. It's possibly because Broil has a reduced cast time in Endwalker. It's going to shave a clear second off, so you will have a second in between the global cooldown coming around again to cast instant cast abilities. And a lot of those are going to be fairy abilities that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to weave in because Broil was 2.5 seconds. So possibly that's the reason. I guess we'll just wait and see on that one. As to the actual fairy behaviours, you know, they were supposed to have, you know, improved AI and not be quite so slow and silly. It's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. We've got some content creators from the media tour over here going, yeah, it worked really well, yeah, it's much sharper, and other ones going, yeah, I don't really feel it. So jury's out on that one. I guess we're going to find out in the field. Anyway, any improvement will be welcome. Finally, we move on to damage. Yeah! So if you're starting out as an Arcanist at like level 4, then Ruin 1 got a 10 potency reduction. I don't think it's going to affect your life too much. When you graduate to Ruin 2, however, it is being increased slightly from 200 to 220. So, meh. Art of War 1's getting a slight potency buff to 165. Art of War 2 is coming, new animation, very exciting. Comes in at level 82. And it will increase the potency slightly to 180. But you know, when you've got like multiple mobs and stuff, that's going to make a significant difference. The Brawl Trilogy has got a 4th edition now. Brawl 4 is going to be coming to your ability slots at level 82 as well, with a potency of 295, which is actually close to what Brawl 3's potency is now. But it has to be said that the previous versions of Brawl have also had their potencies reduced accordingly. So, yeah, I think the most important thing about Brawl, and this is true across all healers, is that their main damage nuke now is going to be a 1.5 second cast, as I mentioned previously. This does mean that, you know, you'll have a second before the global cooldown comes around again to weave in whatever you feel like, and those are going to be your instant casts. Goodies. Just don't use energy drain. I'll go on then. So yes, that is the extent of the Scholar changes. You've got to say, it does really feel to me like Scholars are in the place that Square Enix wants them to be. You know, whether or not that's a bad thing is really up to the individual Scholar, I suppose. There's an awful lot of tinkering around the edges of current abilities, and there's a couple of changes here and there, a couple of new abilities, but, you know, it's certainly not all that I was hoping for. I mean, the energy drain really needs some kind of improvement. I would have liked Selene and Eos to become distinctive again, not just different colours, but, you know, have different abilities. The Faerie gauge has been trimmed back even further. I wanted expansion on that as well. You know, I thought, you know, if you're going to use a separate mechanic like that, then you would add more abilities to it, but they've now trimmed it back to Aether Pact, essentially, and that's it. So, yeah, that's a bit disappointing. Dissipation is still a thing that you'll probably hit before the pull and still feels contrary to the entire design of Scholar, but, you know, I'm a relatively new Scholar, so I'm not comfortable with the idea of dismissing all my pets to get a short bonus and then get them back again. It's weird to me. And you know, if you were looking for exciting and varied DPS rotation, then I'm afraid that none of the healers will cover you in this respect. But you know, Scholars looking for dynamic and interesting interactions, additional dots, more dots, more dots. You're going to be disappointed, I'm afraid. And you know, I think it has to be admitted that we just aren't as sexy as sages, and that was always going to happen. You know, we are solid but unspectacular people. Now, all of that said, I'm looking on the bright side. I'm quite pleased. You know, the improvements to Adlodium and Sucker are quite eye-opening. I'm not sure they're going to survive like that. Surely they're not going to be that high. They've left all the good Aether Pact abilities well alone, so that's fine. Protraction looks like a great ability that I'm going to be using all of the time. And Expedient is a long, long way from the joke that everyone has been seeing it at. So that's going to be a fantastic ability. There will be a lot of people in Endwalker who are very grateful that Scholars have that ability. The deployment tactics change is very welcome. I always felt the cooldown was a little bit long for what it actually did. Was there some chatter about them improving the way that it deploys properly? Because sometimes you had to have sort of a lag time before placing the Adlo on the tank and then using the deployment tactics, because if you used it too fast it wouldn't work. So I hope that's being fixed too, because you know, otherwise it doesn't matter what the cooldown is, it will still be pants. But I guess basically, if you're enjoying your Scholar right now, if you enjoy playing it and healing with it and stuff, then there's plenty of cause for optimism here. You're going to get pretty much the same toolkit with even better shields. You're going to have new abilities. All the Aether Pact abilities that matter are still there, still working exactly as you intended, and the Faeries might be a little bit cleverer. So, you know, I mean, not all these changes address all of Scholar's issues, to be sure, but, you know, it looks pretty great to me. I'm very happy. But of course, it has to be also acknowledged that in terms of, you know, Final Fantasy XIV and Scholars, I am a complete scrub. So I am happy to open the floor now to, you know, more experienced Scholars who may be watching. I mean, you know, what do you think, guys? Are you happy with those potency changes? Would you like a bit more tweaking around the edges before it goes live? Are you sticking with Scholar for Endwalker? I mean, I obviously am. And I've got a couple of guildies who've already declared, yep, I'm going Scholar. for the whole expansion, and you know, I think we'll be in pretty good stead. As I said before, you know, potency is subject to change. We still have 5 weeks until this thing goes live, and you know, they can do patches afterwards and everything else, just in case, you know, we really do need that 500 MP back on energy drain. And you know, the live letter as well, who knows what they'll come up with there. So there may be more good news and of course bad news to come. But yes, I mean, that wraps up the Scholar coverage that I've got for you today. As you might have noticed from the footage, I have now graduated from Stormblood Academy. It was just the other day, and I've now entered the preschool of Shadowbringers, which finally gives me the opportunity after all these months to try these balls. Try these balls. They're very nice. They're very nice balls. So the Stormblood overview and the Scholar impressions, up to 70 is probably going to be the next video, you know, barring some kind of disaster where they delete Scholar and every inquiry you make to Square Enix just redirects you to the Sage's homepage on Lodestone. But of course that won't happen, so I will see you then. Until then though, I am the Conspicuous Moo. Toodaloo.